Today is Sunday, July 24th, 2022. So I've been trying to make a video for the past few months, and between work and real life family, there's just not enough time for me to really work on it in an effective manner. So I'm going to use a vlog approach instead of trying to make formal produced videos. The reason why I want to make these videos is because I have an idea for an application, something I've been kind of poking around and toying with for the past, 10 years. The short of it is it's a new type of AI idea, a foundation, so to speak, that can be used to build a lot more advanced AIs. Now, before I get into details of how and what this would do, let me get a little background of who I am. I'm a programmer for over 20 years. I've built applications from, little console apps and desktop apps to multinational global applications across a vast number of industries and companies, mainly as a contractor. But short is, I have some experience in the field. So this is something that, it's kind of been in my back pocket that I've been kind of toying with during my whole career, actually. And now I think that there's enough AI development out there and technology out there that this actually could be feasible now. So, do I know everything about computer programming? No. No one ever will. I know enough, though. In any case, if you take a look at the way AI is being used today, you'll see a lot of very focused applications, let's call it. For example, an application that's an AI that's trying to play a video game. For example, the League of Legends, there was an AI that came out recently that beat some of the best players in the world. Or the game of Go, you might have heard of. It's also been, had an AI play Go and chess. But all these are very focused, singular approaches at something, to a specific task. And if you look at the AI of science fiction, or general AI, as some people in the field call it, it's a lot different. It tries to think more like a human. I'm not really trying to go through either of those approaches with this new type of foundation. What I want to do is try to take a step toward AI production. It's not going to be trying to, play a game of Go or do a single specific task. On the flip side, it's not going to be trying to argue religion with you. It'd be a simple, in terms of our understanding of intelligence of humans, it'd be a very simple AI. It'd be like a low-skilled labor at best. However, it obviously wouldn't act like a low-skilled labored worker, but it would fulfill some of those jobs in this case. Now, the very first thing I'd want to do, though, is focus on trying to help the workers in their industry. So, for example, if there's an AI able to help manage the floor to help prevent work-related injuries or deaths. For example, if someone is inside of a industrial machine trying to clean it, and someone tries to turn that machine on and thus injuring or killing the person cleaning it, that is a serious risk to a lot of workers in the industrial field right now, in factories. Those kind of dangers can be mitigated just by a simple AI watching the floor and notifying people before they try to do something that would hurt someone else. This would also help get the foundation of the AI knowing when and when not to do stuff and knowing when a human's got to get hurt. So we can then use that intelligence and put into a more generalized one at a later time. But the idea is that first step would make that happen. Another idea is, when the AI gets mature enough, you could then take over some of the jobs that are being used overseas for like slave labor, for example. When a company decides to use, to make a little widget at a company in some poor nation, paying nothing or using child labor, so common unethical business practices that people just ignore in the Western world. Those are causing human suffering, whether you like it or not. But we can use AI and automation to prevent those jobs from being needed anymore. Now, this also comes in the social side of things. I mean, all those things were good, but eventually this AI production, this AI model that would be used for production is going to have a social impact. We don't want it to displace people in their jobs and lives, because, that at that point, if machines are doing all the work, no one will be able to make money, and unless they have a certain skill level. And I hate to say it, but not everyone's going to be able to get to those skill levels eventually, and they'll just make a larger and larger, social welfare state, and that's not a good solution. This AI doesn't need to be ruining lives. It needs, and if a company's got to be using it to replace workers, we don't need to be working with that company. We need to make sure the workers are taken care of before, we can go into that space. And the scary thing is this is not an if this will happen, but a when, because, AI eventually is going to get to this point. The question is, who's going to get there first? There's a lot of people, very intelligent people, both, in corporations, governments, scientists. They're all saying this is going to happen eventually. So the question for you is, from who's listening here, who do you want to have that control of that AI? We got authoritarian governments. I'm pretty sure what's going to happen with those. You also got more Western nations, but even then they have their own problems with corruption and power, not as drastic, of course. You also got profit-driven companies. Like Google, Facebook, Apple, IBM. They're going to be chasing the dollar. And, well, if a person is not going to be useful anymore because an AI can do their job better, why would they keep the person around? This kind of, Briggs reminds me of the way the train industry went when they, started automating a lot of their functions. The only reason why a lot of the workers on the train, that were being used to, flip up signs for, go or stop on these train tracks, the reason they kept their jobs was because of their union. But eventually, the train companies didn't hire new people. Whenever someone retired, they just replaced their post with electrical sign with a light on it instead. So eventually, even the unions won't help this process, because eventually the companies are just not going to hire more people. So there has to be a different way of doing this. Now, this is why I want this to be more of a crowdsourced and a nonprofit type of approach here. So the fact is any other way is going to hurt people in the long run. And if this is going to be successful for not just myself, but for everyone, then it's got to start in a way that's not going to hinder itself in the future. Because if I go out to a VC and get money that way, there's going to be shareholders, and they're going to be, and the moment I try to do anything that's going to help people instead of the company, they're going to be able to sue. And, well, that effectively would twist my arm into putting profits over people. And that's not what this needs to be. So I'm thinking more of a nonprofit, at least at this point, where we make the nonprofit itself does two things. It does advocacy for, AI automation to make sure it's done, without displacing people and ruining lives, but also helping companies find ways to automate without, but do it without hurting people, or to at least stop using unethical worker practices. Because if you got a choice between an automated worker, automated machine doing work for you, or slave labor or child labor somewhere in another country that's allowed, I think that'd be a win if you went toward the automated AI in that aspect, morally. But at some point, that also will be not enough to stave off the displacement of workers. And it might end up being a new way of living, but we'll get into that later in future videos. In any case, for now, I just want to make this first vlog, see if there's any interest in the ideas I'm trying to present here. If there's enough, then I'll do work to set up an organization, an LLC, and I'll set up some websites to get more of the idea out there, do a lot of the groundwork to share out the idea in full. While I do have my own documentation, I've done a lot of this AI that I've built and designed. I don't want to share that publicly because then so just potentially take it and run with it themselves. That has the capital to do so. But while I'm not interested in VC investment, if there was one that happened, there would have to be serious conditions around it. Because as I said before, this needs to be something that's going to have a moral impact on everyone, and it can't be driven by profit. That's just an absolute, requirement of any kind of funding I'd get to make this happen. But in any case, for now, if you're interested, like, subscribe, share, as I'll be using that as a measure of interest. And if I see enough interest in it, I'll take the next steps forward. Until then, be safe out there.